I'm Wendy Rutledge, and this is Palm Beach TV, a production of the Palm Beach Civic Association. Here is what is coming your way next on this week's Island News. A senior ecologist with the Everglades Foundation gives us his insights on the toxic bacterial outbreak at Lake O and his predictions for the summer. We'll show you how there is some protection built into the C-51 to catch the toxic gunk. The question is, how well is it working? The Army Corps of Engineers weighs in on predictions of water releases into the C-51 canal, and we take a look at NOAA's predictions for the 2021 hurricane season. It's all coming up next on Palm Beach TV. Each week now, we are focusing on the toxic cyanobacterial bloom that is going on out at Lake Okeechobee and on the consequences it may have for all of us in the Lake Worth Lagoon. This week, we were very fortunate to get insight from the senior ecologist at the Everglades Foundation, Dr. Stephen Davis. To even begin to understand this year's very early and very ominous blue-green algae buildup at Lake Okeechobee, it's important to look at the role of Lake O within the Everglades ecosystem.
The Everglades ecosystem and the way water is managed in South Florida, it's all tied to this greater Everglades that once extended all the way up to Orlando, through Lake Okeechobee, all the way down to where Everglades National Park is, and even to Florida Bay and the Florida Keys. And so that is about 200 miles of our peninsula here in South Florida.
An ecosystem broken years ago by the draining of the River of Grass, that natural water filtration system south of the lake to allow for residential and agricultural development.
Now we have yet another cyanobacterial bloom in Lake Okeechobee. Can you tie that together? I mean, what does that tell us about the state of affairs with Everglades restoration?
It says that we've ignored a problem for decades, and we've done very little to address it.
Decades of chemical runoff into Lake O has created what's called legacy pollution, years and years of toxic buildup that now lives at the bottom of the lake.
This is really a result of accumulated pollution over decades, not just within the watersheds, but within the lake itself. Now that we're getting into the warmer months and the longer days of the year, we're starting to see it become more toxic, more widespread. And that's frightening because as we move into the wet season now, we're starting to see the rains, inflows to the lake will pick up. And given where the lake is right now, we know that those discharges will occur.
Several years ago, the Everglades Foundation spent $10 million to study the feasibility of a technology or process that would suction the chronically toxic muck from the bottom of the lake. Sadly, their findings were disappointing. Technology was not there yet. The process would have necessitated lowering the lake level substantially and with unknown environmental consequences, which meant Everglades restoration would have to play out in a more natural way.
It's about redirecting water from the lake back to the south and recognizing that the water is polluted. We know that water needs to be cleansed. And the way we do that by sending it south is through the 70,000+ acre network of treatment marshes that the state of Florida has built.
Those treatment marshes, just part of the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan, begun 21 years ago in 2000 and still unfolding over the next 10 to 15 years. By next year, the reinforcement of the Herbert Hoover Dike at Lake O will allow for the lake levels to stay a bit higher, reducing water releases to the east and west. Even more promising, the completion of a reservoir to the south. But both of those projects will have no bearing on the imminent toxic threat we face this summer.
How do you view the critical moment that we're in right now?
I view it as really a call for action, immediate action by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Immediate action in the form of input on the Lake Okeechobee Systems Operating Manual, currently under revision, that will determine Lake O water release plans for the next 10 years. Meantime, this summer will not be pretty.
If we have an average wet season, we're very likely to see discharge of polluted water to both the east and west coast within the next month or two.
The main artery connecting Lake Okeechobee to the Lake Worth Lagoon is the C-51 canal. Our own Philip Baldwin, who is a photographer with us and also a trained biologist, along with our consultant, Karen Marcus, went out there and took a look at the sediment trap to see whether, with the advice of experts, it is capable of catching this toxic gunk before it actually reaches us.
According to the Army Corps of Engineers, there are no discharges from Lake Okeechobee to the Lake Worth Lagoon through the C-51 canal right now. However, a blue-green algae bloom has been detected in the canal.
Remember, the canal itself has been a recipient of these discharges from the lake for 80 years. So there is a lot of muck on the bottom of the canal itself, and all of that muck contains the nutrients. So the bottom line is we have enough nutrients already built up in the canal that it can generate some of the blue-green algae on its own, even absent further discharges from Lake Okeechobee.
Nutrient and heavy metal-laden muck has been discharged through the C-51 canal into the Lake Worth Lagoon for at least 80 years. You can see a sediment plume in this photo from 1940. After decades of discharges, the muck is several feet deep south of the canal and east of Ibis Island. To reduce these discharges in 2007, a sediment trap was created in the canal.
We dug out 100,000 cubic yards of material from the bottom of the canal. And this water that is flowing at high velocity down the canal, it suddenly reaches this deep hole. The water automatically slows down as it passes over this wide
and then the
cross-sectional
sediment
area.
drops to the bottom.
Sediment drops down to the bottom, gets captured in this trap. We anticipated this deep hole we dug in the C-51 would slowly fill back up. We knew it would never fill all the way back up to the original depth from where we dug it.
Right.
Because the sediments that are falling into this hole are very fine. It filled up 2/3 of the way 3 years after we dug it. And that was in 2007.
Right.
And that is where it has sat since then.
The South Florida Water Management District was supposed to maintain the trap, but in 12 years, no maintenance has been done. Cleaning out the trap would help, but this is a big problem that could use a bigger trap.
Somewhere west of State Road 7, to find a large enough piece of land where flows from the C-51 can be diverted into a much larger sediment trap. This was more of a pilot project, and something that can be more easily maintained without having to get into such a key drainage feature that's depended upon.
So stop it further west before it even gets into the canal would be the ultimate solution. And of course, that is what Mayor Kerner's bond issue. There was a component of the water bond issue that would look at and doing that too. So that would be a great solution. I think everybody would agree.
As we once again worry about summer discharges from Lake Okeechobee, it's worth remembering.
The fresh water comes and goes. The sediment that it carries with it stays behind.
Right.
And that's always a problem for us in managing the lagoon.
Right.
The Army Corps of Engineers is charged with flood control around the lake and with deciding exactly how much water and when is discharged from Lake Okeechobee. This week, we asked them what their predictions are for discharge into the C-51 canal.
Can you project how much, what percentage of the water release would go through and eventually end up in the C-51 canal?
Yes, ma'am. There is nothing going to Lake Worth Lagoon right now. It hasn't been going out that way for a while. I think the best way I can, a very, very small amount goes out there, period. But we understand that the C-51 does have algae visible.
Part of what determines exactly how much water is released from Lake Okeechobee is how intense a hurricane season we are going to have. And since hurricane season starts in just a week, June 1st, we are taking a look now at the predictions for this year's season. NOAA is predicting another above normal Atlantic hurricane season. For 2021, a likely range of 13 to 20 named storms with winds of 39 miles per hour or higher, of which 6 to 10 could become hurricanes, which is winds of 74 miles per hour or higher, including 3 to 5 major hurricanes that would be category 3, 4, or 5 with winds of 111 miles per hour or higher. Scientists say warmer than average sea surface temperatures in the tropical Atlantic Ocean and Caribbean Sea, weaker tropical Atlantic trade winds, and an enhanced West African monsoon will likely be factors in this year's overall activity. The Atlantic hurricane season starts June 1 and runs through November 30th. Last year's record-breaking season serves as a reminder to all residents in coastal regions or areas prone to inland flooding from rainfall to be prepared for the 2021 hurricane season. Walk along the beach and once again we see piles of that smelly, ugly, annoying, buggy sargassum. The seaweed is back and in overwhelming abundance. Scientists predict it will get worse this summer. Helping to feed the growth of the sargassum is nitrogen-rich runoff. That's the same stuff that causes toxic bacteria blooms in Lake Okeechobee and is now fueling the rapid reproduction of seaweed finding its way onto our shore. In small quantities, sargassum is a good thing, providing shelter to hatchling sea turtles. In large quantities, though, it can cause allergies, breathing problems, and of course, as it dries out, emits that offensive smell. The uptick in sargassum usually coincides with turtle nesting season, which limits the amount of cleanup that can be done. That's it for this week's newscast. We thank you for joining us. If you did enjoy it, we want you to share it with a friend by forwarding the link below. If you are not a member of the Palm Beach Civic Association, we hope you'll join us. And if you are a member, please renew. We will see you next time on Palm Beach TV, a production of the Palm Beach Civic Association, where membership matters.